Hello, everybody. Thank you for tuning in. This is Landon Ellis, and I am doing my presentation on the Taisho Era of Japan. So, with the Taisho Era of Japan, it started in 1912 after the death of the Meiji Emperor. It would last for only about 14 years up until the end of 1926. It was a very short time when compared with the Meiji era before it and the Showa era afterwards. But the Taisho period definitely had a lot of influence in how Japan came to be who they are today. So that is what my presentation will be on. And without further ado, let's get started. So when we're looking at the beginning of the Taisho period, it started, like I said before, in 1912, with a man named Yoshihito, who was only 33 around the time that his father, the Meiji Emperor, died. So he took over the throne and would rule over it through the remainder of the Taisho period. And now with Yoshihito, he was a very frail man. He battled with meningitis as a kid, and even as an adult, his health was not up to snuff with other people his age. And the older he got, it got worse and worse. And by around the late 19 teens, like it, all the other people that helped Yoshihito were trying to figure out how to retire him because they didn't figure he would be lasting any longer. So by 1921, he would be helped out by his son, which would be the eventual Showa era emperor, Prince Hirohito. Now, the entirety of the Taisho period was marked with a lot of increased participation in politics as well as society in general, which was empowered through the use of literacy for all and compulsory education. Now, with all the mass literacy going on during this Taisho period, it would allow both urban and rural consumers to encounter descriptions and images of fashionable trends and to be able to think in new ways. And in turn, these would bring up these new emerging tastes and lifestyles such as bunka seikatsu, which is the cultured life, and it's associated with middle class consumers like we have it today. And you also have eroguro nonsensu, which means erotic grotesque nonsense, and it's associated with amusements, art, and literature that were decadent, bizarre, deviant, or absurd. So they're into some weird stuff, I guess. Now, with all these changes happening in the culture of Japan during this time, a lot of the conservatives were just very appalled by these and wanted to see a return to the native Japanese values and norms. And what's interesting to note during this time, like Japan is today, is that you see a mix of both Western style clothing and traditional Japanese clothing. But yeah, these conservatives were trying to reject these Western modernity as a role model and trying to advance the idea that Japan would lead the world between the East and West, and that would be known as Japanism. Now, with some of the political accomplishments during the Taisho era, they included the advent of powerful political parties, which we could still see in the Japanese political system today. The emergence of labor and women's movements, so a lot more equality when it comes to women's rights, and you see the proliferation of democratic political ideologies, which you could assume came a lot from the Western influences of Europe and the United States. And also during this time, which came towards the end of World War I in 1918, one of the members of the Diet was one of the first ones to become prime minister by the name of Hara Takashi, who was part of the Seiyukai, part of the Seiyukai party, one of the many parties of Japan during that time, of which he was able to earn it through the typical classic political promises like schools, roads, and railroads, and these were usually directly towards these Seiyukai, towards like electing the Seiyukai candidates, and also they were blamed for stuffing ballot boxes and falsifying election returns. So there was a lot of shady business going on during these elections, and with the whole gearing up towards the democratic side of things in the political spectrum of Japan, you can see a lot of corruption and greed going on during this time. Now, many people know that Japan played a major role in World War II on the side of the Axis powers, and we were one of their main enemies, of which they ultimately lost towards us. But what a lot of people forget to realize is that the Japanese were our allies in the previous World War, back in the 19 teens. With Japan, they started in a war very close to beginning around August of 1914, where they were agreeing to honor the terms that they already made back in 1902 with Great Britain, in order to help out with their cause, despite their doubts that they would even win with Germany's military might. Now, with the outbreak of war, this gave Japan a chance in order to expand their sphere of influence in China, which they would do to great effect by taking over the colony of Tsingtao in the autumn of 1914, which was previously being held by Germany. And they were also able to help chase the German Asiatic Squadron out of the Pacific Ocean. But despite all these successes, they would go as far as the Indian Ocean with no more major battles up to this point. That is until the spring of 1917, where Great Britain was asking for more assistance, including from Japan, which they would definitely offer to help them with, and they would send out initially 8, which would grow into 14 destroyers and a flagship cruiser in order to help them out over in Europe. Now, before this time, the thinking of the Great War really didn't register with the public because there wasn't a lot going on around this area. Despite this, though, the appearance of the Japanese destroyers and warships in aid to Great Britain helped out significantly with the war at sea over in Europe. After the war, in the year 1919, when all the Allied powers met up for the Versailles Peace Conference, Japan was part of these Big Five, where it shows just how important their role was in this, that the Allies actually gave them a seat in the peace proceedings, although they wouldn't gain any monumental territory from it. However, with the League of Nations being established, they would gain a permanent seat on the council for the League, and the peace treaty signed at Versailles also confirmed the transfer to Japan of Germany's rights to Shandong, which was a provision which would eventually lead to anti-Japanese riots and a mass political movement all throughout China. So while the Japanese ultimately benefited from the after effects of World War I, China was greatly angered. Now out of all of the different schools of thought that arose from the Taisho period, one that was pretty prevalent, which is very different from Japan of today would be the idea of individualism, or as it's known in Japanese, ko, gonjin, kojin shuji. And it was an idea that not necessarily bloomed from the Taisho era. It actually had its roots in the late Meiji period, due to a lot of discourse occurring. But this is the era in which it would start to flourish, and you would see this individualism on display with the daily newspapers as well as the monthly journals such as Chuo Koran, which translates to Central Review, Taiyo, the sun, and Waseda Bungaku, which is Waseda letters. But at the same time, you could see that with the rising of state power, along with along with the militarism that would come from the Showa era, all the way through World War II, this individualistic ideologies would be restricted upon somewhat. But with these individualistic practices, along with the flourishing of newspapers and publishing companies, you see different ways of different forms of expression through art, including one called Jiji manga. Now, manga, as you may know, is a popular form of entertainment in Japan nowadays, which can spin off into visual media through anime. But this is where manga really got one of its earliest starts. And through the rise of Jiji manga, you would have artists such as Kitazawa Rakuten, Okamoto Ippei, and Shimokama Oten rising up in popularity to show their thoughts and basically satirize society as a whole during this time. And overall, you could see these koji manga can be seen as like our modern day political satire cartoons you see in USA Today or whatnot. And ladies and gentlemen, that is just a little bit of what a lot of people don't know about the the lesser known Taisho period era. It was a period sandwiched in between two much bigger eras in modern Japanese history, but it definitely had a huge impact on how Japan is today through its ideologies, its forms of art, its cultural ideologies and everything. So this is definitely an era that, especially as historians, should not be overlooked when considering where Japan exactly came from. And I thank you all for watching this presentation, and I hope everyone is doing okay through this crazy time here in our world. Take care and thank you.